Ethan Caldwell never believed in marriage, especially not arranged ones, but as his father's lawyer read out the terms of the will, he realized he had no choice. Ethan Caldwell will only gain full control of Orion Tech if he is legally married within 6 months of William Caldwell's passing. The room fell silent. The board members sat along the polished conference table, their expressions unreadable but expectant. They didn't care what Ethan thought. They only cared about the company's stability. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his steel-gray eyes cold. An absurd condition. Gregory Blackwell, his father's longtime attorney, merely smiled. Perhaps, but it was his final wish. For days, Ethan sought a way out. He explored every legal loophole, but the will was airtight. Without marriage, Orion Tech would slip through his fingers. Naomi Sinclair became the perfect, albeit unwilling, solution. She was the founder of Connect the World, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing internet access to remote areas. Orion Tech had been eyeing telecommunications expansion in Africa, and a partnership with Naomi would give them an undeniable advantage. Naomi agreed, but not for Orion Tech, for her own mission. Her foundation needed funding, and this marriage would secure it. There was no love in this union, only strategy. And so, 1 month later, in a lavish ceremony attended by the city's most powerful figures, Ethan and Naomi exchanged vows. Their wedding kiss lasted just long enough to be convincing. There was no honeymoon. After their lavish wedding, Ethan and Naomi returned to New York, where a luxurious penthouse had been prepared for them. But despite sharing a roof, the distance between them was wider than an ocean. Ethan was the embodiment of control. Every aspect of his life was calculated: his work schedule, his investments, even the precise order of bottles in his liquor cabinet. Naomi, on the other hand, was a force of nature. She thrived on unpredictability and refused to be confined by a marriage without love. Dinners were silent. They spoke only of business. Orion Tech's partnership with Connect the World, upcoming projects, expansion plans. When dinner ended, so did the conversation, and they would retreat to separate rooms. But then, things started to shift. One evening, Naomi returned from a fundraising gala, exhaustion evident in her every movement. Ethan, though he would never admit it, noticed. "You look unwell." His voice was low, not quite concern, but not indifference either. Naomi shrugged. "It's just been a long day." She said nothing more, but as she walked past him, she swayed slightly. Before she could stumble, Ethan caught her arm. The contact lasted only a second, a fleeting moment where warmth passed between them, but Naomi quickly pulled away, her expression unreadable. "I don't need you to worry about me." Ethan said nothing, but the next morning a doctor arrived at the penthouse. Naomi didn't know how to react to the quiet gesture. In the days that followed, their dynamic began to shift in small but undeniable ways. Naomi realized that Ethan wasn't as emotionless as he seemed. When she spoke about a village in Kenya where Connect the World was working, he actually listened. A week later, she received a large anonymous donation. She didn't have to ask. She knew it was him. One night, Naomi dragged Ethan out of his office at 10 p.m., insisting that he walk with her through the quiet streets of Manhattan. She pointed out the late-night diners, the street musicians, and said, "You can't live your whole life behind glass towers. Sometimes the real world is right here." Ethan didn't like her spontaneity, but he couldn't deny that something about the way she saw life made him want to slow down, just a little. Then came the night of the storm. They were driving home from an event when rain poured down in torrents, flooding the streets. Their car was forced to stop, leaving them no choice but to walk the rest of the way. By the time they reached the penthouse, they were both drenched. Naomi laughed, her joy unfiltered, while Ethan simply watched, unable to comprehend how a storm could amuse her. "You've never seen rain before?" she teased. "I've never seen anyone laugh because of it." Naomi paused, then smiled. "Sometimes you have to learn to enjoy what you can't control." Ethan didn't reply, but as Naomi ran her fingers through her wet hair, his gaze remained locked on her. 1 second. 2 seconds. Time slowed. And then, as if drawn by an invisible force, Ethan leaned in. Naomi didn't pull away. Their first kiss wasn't part of a contract. It was real. The storm raged outside, rain slamming against the windows, while inside the penthouse, darkness swallowed everything. The power had gone out. Naomi stood by the window, staring at the city drenched in relentless rain. The street lights reflected against the wet pavement, casting an eerie glow. "It'll come back soon," she murmured, breaking the silence. Ethan sat on the couch, his soaked jacket discarded, his usually sharp eyes softened by the dim light filtering through the storm. "I actually prefer it this way." Naomi turned, raising an eyebrow. "You like power outages?" "I like the quiet." He leaned back, eyes unfocused. No emails, no calls, no shareholders demanding answers about stock prices in the middle of the night. Naomi let out a quiet chuckle. "Sounds like you hate your own company." Ethan shook his head. "No, I just hate what it's turned me into." His words made Naomi pause. For the first time, Ethan Caldwell wasn't the cold, calculating businessman she had come to know. In the shadows of the room, stripped of the world's expectations, he seemed human. "Were you always like this?" she asked softly. Ethan studied her for a long moment before letting out a dry laugh. "No, but my father didn't give me a choice." "What do you mean?" "He planned my life before I even knew how to spell my own name," Ethan said, tilting his head back. "He decided I would run Orion Tech. That was never up for discussion. Where I studied, who I associated with, what I pursued. It was all mapped out for me." Naomi remained silent, absorbing his words. "I never really had a choice," he murmured, "not even in this marriage." For the first time, Naomi saw something behind his steel exterior. Resentment, exhaustion, loneliness. She exhaled, her own gaze distant. "I understand." Ethan turned to her, waiting. "My mother," Naomi said, her voice quieter now. "She was a relief doctor. I spent my childhood following her through war zones, disaster areas. She believed connection wasn't just about technology, it was about understanding people." A pause. "She died when I was 16. Ethan's brows furrowed. "A flood in Nigeria," Naomi continued. "She went to provide aid, but disease spread afterward, and she caught it." Ethan didn't know what to say. Naomi gave a small, bitter smile. "They called her a hero, but she was just my mom, and I was just a kid who lost everything." Silence. 1 second. 2 seconds. A lingering gaze. Ethan reached out, brushing his fingers against her cheek. She didn't pull away. And then, slowly, he leaned in. For the first time, the kiss wasn't for show. It wasn't for a contract. It was real. Their happiness didn't last long. After that stormy night, everything changed. Ethan no longer kept his distance. They had breakfast together, their conversations no longer confined to business. When he returned home from endless board meetings, Naomi was always there, waiting in the living room, a glass of wine in hand, ready to listen. They hadn't put their feelings into words, but they didn't need to, because somehow, despite the odds, they had become something more. But then the scandal broke. It happened on a Monday morning. The front page of a tabloid featured a picture of Naomi standing next to an older man, a well-known professor from Princeton. Ethan Caldwell's wife and her secret past, affair with a university professor? Naomi froze. "What the hell is this?" she whispered, fingers tightening around the newspaper. There was no affair. That man had been her mentor, nothing more. A single photograph taken at a conference had been twisted into something malicious. Ethan walked into the dining room, his gaze immediately landing on the expression on her face. "Did you see this?" she asked. He pulled out a chair, took the paper from her hands, and scanned the article. His face remained unreadable, but Naomi saw the tension in his jaw. "It's complete nonsense," she said quickly. "There's nothing between me and him." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He set the paper down, his fingers interlocked. "Is there anything else I should know?" Her chest tightened. "You're doubting me?" Her voice was quiet, but laced with hurt. Ethan said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Everything they had built, the late nights, the stolen touches, the kisses that had nothing to do with their contract, felt suddenly fragile. Naomi stared at him for a long moment, then pushed back her chair and walked out of the room. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. But something inside her had broken. Naomi couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring down at the wedding ring on her finger. It had once been nothing more than a symbol of obligation, a contract she agreed to for the sake of business. But now it meant something else, something she hadn't been brave enough to admit until now. She had fallen in love with him, but love couldn't exist without trust. Naomi stood up, walked to the desk, and opened the drawer. She pulled out a sheet of paper and began to write. The next morning, Ethan woke up to an unfamiliar silence. There were no footsteps in the kitchen, no sound of pages turning as Naomi sat on the couch reading. A strange feeling settled in his chest, an emptiness he couldn't quite place. When he walked into the living room, the first thing he saw was her wedding ring sitting neatly on the table. Beside it, a letter. "Ethan, I never expected love in this marriage, but somewhere along the way, I started hoping." But hope is a dangerous thing, isn't it? I can forgive many things, but not suspicion, especially not from you. If one day you truly want to find me, then come without doubts. Come with trust. Until then, consider me your temporary wife. Naomi. Ethan clenched the letter in his hands, his heartbeat hammering in his chest. The weight of her words crashed over him like a tidal wave, leaving him breathless. His hands trembled, not just from frustration, but from a fear he had never known before, the fear of truly losing her. For the first time in his life, he felt utterly powerless. And for the first time, he realized he had lost something he could never replace. Not just Naomi, but the future they could have had. Naomi had been gone for 3 days. 3 days that felt like 3 years. Ethan still worked. He still attended meetings, still made decisions that shook the market. But when he returned home at night, the silence of the penthouse was suffocating. No Naomi. No quiet laughter as she teased him. No late-night conversations about things that had nothing to do with business, about a world beyond glass skyscrapers. He had lost her, and now he realized she wasn't just part of the marriage. She was the one person he couldn't lose. 3 days after Naomi left, Ethan received a call from Winston Sinclair, Naomi's adoptive father. "What did you do to make her leave?" His voice was deep and firm. Ethan clenched his jaw, staring at the wedding ring still lying on the table. "I doubted her." A sigh came through the line. "You're not the first man to do that, but you might be the last she lets hurt her." Ethan closed his eyes. "I need to know where she is." "You won't find her," Winston said. "Naomi is better at disappearing than you think. I will find her." "Ethan," Winston's voice softened, but the meaning behind his words was sharp. "If you really want her back, you don't need to find her. You need to give her a reason to return." Those words haunted Ethan all night. He couldn't force Naomi to come back. He couldn't use power or wealth to make her forgive him. There was only one thing he could do: prove that he believed in her. The next day, Ethan redirected Orientech's resources towards supporting Connect the World, the project Naomi had devoted her life to. Not as a silent donation, not as a business deal, as a real commitment. He appeared at a press conference announcing that Orientech would partner with Connect the World to expand internet access to the most remote parts of the globe. "I used to believe that technology was the most powerful thing in the world," Ethan told the crowd of reporters, "but I was wrong. True power is the ability to connect people, and no one understands that better than Naomi Sinclair." He looked straight into the cameras, knowing that if Naomi was watching, she would understand. "I once doubted the most valuable thing in my life. I lost her because of it. And if I have even a chance to make things right, I'll do whatever it takes." The news spread quickly, but more importantly, it reached Naomi. And for the first time in 3 days, she picked up her phone. Naomi sat in her small apartment in New Orleans, eyes locked on the TV screen. She couldn't look away from Ethan. He stood before a crowd of reporters, admitting his mistakes with raw honesty. He wasn't trying to spin the situation, wasn't manipulating it like a businessman. He was simply telling the truth. I once doubted the most valuable thing in my life. I lost her because of it. And if I have even the smallest chance to make things right, I will do whatever it takes. Her chest tightened. She hadn't expected this. Ethan had always been calculated, always in control. But this time, he had let go of everything, just to prove he believed in her. Her phone vibrated. His name flashed on the screen, and for a moment, she just stared at it. The logical part of her said to ignore it, that she owed him nothing, but then she remembered his words on TV, the raw regret in his voice. Naomi hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. Was she ready for this? Was she ready to hear his voice again? Her heart answered before her mind could catch up. She pressed answer. Naomi, his voice was rough, exhausted. She gripped the phone tightly, taking a slow breath. Why are you doing all this? Because you are worth everything. His answer was immediate, and because I can't live without you. Naomi closed her eyes. She had left because he didn't trust her, but now he had proven that he did, more than anything. Where are you? She whispered. New Orleans, he replied without hesitation. If you want me to, I'll come to you right now. Naomi took a shaky breath and stood. No need, wait for me. When Naomi walked into the hotel lobby, she spotted him instantly. Ethan stood in the corner, rising to his feet the moment he saw her. His slate gray eyes locked onto hers. He looked tired, but when he saw her, something flickered in his gaze. Hope. Her heart pounded. There were no words for what she felt in that moment. So she didn't speak. Naomi simply walked up to him, held his gaze for a single second, then stepped forward and wrapped her arms tightly around him. Ethan pulled her close, holding her as if he would never let her go again. I'm sorry, he whispered. I was wrong. I know, she murmured. Ethan pulled back slightly, searching her eyes. So, do you forgive me? Naomi looked at him, her expression softening. I already have, but this time, don't make me regret it. Ethan didn't answer with words. He just leaned down and kissed her. Slow, deep, and real. This time, there was no doubt. Only love. 3 months later, Naomi stood on the balcony of their new apartment, gazing at the cityscape stretching before her. The lights of New York shimmered, reflecting against the glass towers, casting a glow that felt both unfamiliar and comforting. Behind her, Ethan approached, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? His deep voice rumbled against her ear. Naomi smiled, leaning back into his chest. That 3 months ago, I never thought I'd be here again. Ethan tightened his embrace slightly, his voice carrying a hint of regret. I still can't believe I almost lost you. What matters is that you didn't. She turned to face him, her eyes glowing under the city lights. Ethan reached up, gently tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. I revoked my father's inheritance clause, he said quietly. I don't need the company if it means losing you. Naomi blinked in surprise before letting out a soft laugh. Ethan Caldwell walking away from Orion Tech? I don't believe it. He smirked. I'm not walking away. I'm just building it on my own terms, without anyone controlling my choices. And this time, I want you beside me. She studied him for a long moment before taking his hand. If you really want me by your side, then you have to trust me. Completely. No conditions. I'm learning. He squeezed her fingers. And I won't make the same mistake twice. Naomi nodded slightly before pulling him into a slow, lingering kiss, one filled with promise. When they pulled apart, Ethan looked into her eyes, his voice steady and certain. I choose you, Naomi. Today, tomorrow, always. Below them, the city pulsed with its usual restless energy. But this time, the world didn't feel so cold. This time, they had each other.